Teresa. I just want to start off by saying this is not my story. It's my daughter's. Her name was Teresa. She died 2 weeks ago, a self-taking of her life by OD. She called me prior to the act, informed me of her intentions and the reasons behind them. I bled with her, begged her through tears not to go through with what she had planned on doing. But she was result in her actions, in her decision, in her conviction. With growing horror, I realized this was no bluff. No desperate cry for attention or reassurance. No. As she hung up the phone, I knew with certainty she was already gone from this world. I knew it from the moment that she said, "Daddy, Ray is here." I immediately phoned the police, which of course did no good, knowing that they would be hopefully able to reach her well before I could, but I also knew they would be too late. I knew it. They found her in bed, by all appearances in a deep, deep sleep. Peaceful, if that, and they found her, well, one hand draped across her stomach, the other outstretched to the side, her palms facing up, her fingers curled as if clutching something. Another hand, perhaps. But the other side of the bed was Ray's, and it was empty. This is also Ray's story, you see, not just my daughter's. He died a little more than a year before Teresa did, unfortunately. Yeah. He was shot twice. One through his right hand, if you can believe it. He held it out in defense. The bullet pierced both through his cell phone and his palm before lodging into the wall of the bathroom in which he had made a final desperate attempt to hide. The second bullet was found in his neck, where he bled out quickly, alone on the cold bathroom floor. He was one of 9 people who died in his office. That day, 8 of those people thought it was just another Monday at work, unaware that they would not be walking out alive at the end of the day. Nope. The 9th to die was the shooter. Had no intention of walking out again. "Hello," she answered, a smile in her voice. "Why did the man always get hit by a bike on his way to work?" Ray said. "I don't know," Teresa responded. "Why did he?" "Because he was stuck in a vicious cycle," Ray said. Teresa chuckled. The joke was funny and wasn't at the same time. But, see, he had corny humor, strange sense in his joy, and telling these awful jokes brought Teresa more pleasure than the punchline itself. Case in point, he had used a ridiculous pickup line to win her over in the first Teresa had laughed out loud. One, because the pickup line was genuinely pretty funny. Let's give him that. And two, because Ray, tall and attractive in a goofy kind of way, was so ridiculously happy. He used it on her, his smile contagious and immediately endearing. And as bad as the line had been, it had worked like a charm. They had been together ever since. "How was your day?" Teresa said, sitting down at the kitchen table. "Living the dream," Ray said. Actually, my presentation went well this morning. I'm supposed to present it again to senior staff on Wednesday. Things are looking promising. "That's great news," Teresa said. "It really is," Ray said with satisfaction in his voice. "Do you know if this proposal goes through? We should celebrate, go away somewhere." "I don't know," Teresa said, thinking. "Cheryl has that cabin that she said we're always welcome to use. We ought to take her up on that sometime. She and Brad will end up selling it before we ever use it. It would be nice to get away." But that day, Ray didn't respond. "Babe," Teresa asked. A moment's hesitation. "Did you hear that?" Ray asked. "Hear what?" Teresa said. But before he could respond, she heard it, a loud report, a distant bang coming over the phone. Ray, what was that?" "I don't know," he said, and from the sound of his voice, he was walking. His voice sounded shaky. Ray. There was a second loud report, still distant but closer, and Teresa felt her hands go cold when she thought she heard a woman's voice scream. "I'm going to find out what's going on," Ray said. "I'll call you back." "Ray," Teresa said. But he was gone. She set the phone down on the table and stared at the black screen. She got up suddenly from the kitchen table, walked to the sink, filled a glass of water. With she down, staring at the phone, she willed it to ring again, to show Ray's name. But it never did. It never did. Teresa rushed over, picked it up. She called Ray's phone. It went to voicemail. He called his desk phone. It went to voicemail. She called reception. No answer. It too went to voicemail. She called. Table. Hands. Trembling. No answer. She found it hard to catch her breath, to imagine or not imagine the worst, to convince herself that she had heard. What she had heard did not mean what she thought it meant. An interminable moment later, her phone rang. She snatched it up. "Ray," she said. "Baby," he whispered, his tone urgent. "There's a man with a gun." Teresa sank into the chair. "Where are you?" she asked, also whispering, without even realizing she was. "I'm in a bathroom down the hall from my office. Reese, he killed Mark. I saw it happen." His voice was trembling, on the verge of tears or panic. "Ray, hang up and call the police." "Ray, hang up and call the police." "Immediately," she said. "I did." He hesitated. "Apparently they're on their way." "Okay," she said. "Just be calm." She said this as much to herself as she said it to Ray. "Where is he? Where is the shooter?" Teresa began to cry silently, the hopelessness of Ray's situation sinking into her mind. The thought, she raised that thought. "Who is he?" she asked. "I don't know. He's wearing a ski mask." A ski mask. "I think he's..." Ray stopped talking, and suddenly, the sound of a realization made Teresa's entire body go numb. Ray, she said louder. Bang, the sound of the stall door crashing open. No, Ray screamed. Ray, Teresa yelled. Bang, the second shot. The sound of the gun. But then everything went silent. Definitely silent. It was painful through her ears. The house was so silent. It was like time was standing still as Teresa struggled to take a breath. Finally, she just screamed over and over. She couldn't even hear herself. She was screaming so loud. The shooter's man was named Vincent Holland. He had worked in the engineering department just one floor down from Ray's office in marketing. A textbook disgruntled employee with manic depressive issues. At least that was the story, and the press was reporting it all over the news. Vincent had managed to kill 8 of his co-workers and then had turned the gun on himself at the first sound of approaching sirens. The following 24 hours was a total blur for Teresa. Through a haze of shock and sadness, she had answered police questions and had identified her husband's lifeless body, his face pale but still unmistakably his own. His face, that's all she could remember, and had made necessary phone calls to family and friends. That was the job, I guess, of a grieving wife, she thought to herself. Teresa had not asked, did not even care what the bills were, but her friend Cheryl had insisted upon giving her a cocktail of them. But she had taken them all quickly, slipping into a warm embrace of sleep where her grief, at least briefly, could not reach her for the moment. When she woke up the next day, she wondered why. Briefly, her chest hurt so badly it took but a moment for her to remember, and tears were immediate. She rolled over and put her palm on Ray's head at the bed where the mattress was cold and empty. Behind the sound of her crying, she could hear voices down the hallway. Cheryl and Teresa's mother were speaking in somber tones. Teresa looked at the clock. It was shortly after noon. Cheryl's sleeping pills had caused her to sleep more than 11 hours, which was fine with her. Teresa sat up in bed and wiped the tears from her cheeks, consciously pressing this sorrow deep into her stomach. She picked up her cell phone from the nightstand, more out of habit than necessity, and shuffled towards the bathroom, flipping a switch. The light assaulted her eyes, and for a moment she absorbed her own pitiful reflection. Eyes swollen almost to shut, cheeks splotchy, nose red. She took in a long, shaky breath. Then her phone buzzed in her hand, and she jumped. The screen, it said Ray. Teresa stared at it, a mixture of disbelief, confusion, and a slight bit of horror coursing through her brain. But she answered it. Hello. Her voice was barely a croak. Why did the man always get hit by a bike on his way to work? Ray said. Teresa struggled to take a breath. Confused, Reese looked at herself in the mirror. A horror came over her, a hollowing mask of grief. The floor felt like it was tilting under her, and her brain, still kicking off last remnants of Cheryl's cocktail pills, was a swamp of conflicting thoughts. What day is it? She asked. What? It's Monday, he said. What's going on? What's wrong? No, Ray, it's Tuesday, Teresa said. Ray began, but then he stopped. There was silence on both of the phones for the moment. Then Ray said, Did you hear that? Hear what? She asked. Then she heard it. The same sickening feeling of deja vu swept through her. There was a loud report, a distant bang coming over the phone. What was that? Ray said. From the sound of his voice, he was walking. Ray, wait. Teresa said. There was another loud report, still distant but closer, and Teresa heard a woman scream. I'm going to find out what's going on, Ray said. I'll call you back. Don't, Teresa said, but he was gone. Teresa put her phone down on the bathroom sink and stared down at her hair cascading in front of her eyes. She shook her head violently, trying to shake off the confusion that made it difficult for her to focus. She ran her fingers through her hair, then pulled at it in frustration. She picked up her phone and called Ray's cell. Voicemail. She called desk phone. Same thing. Voicemail. Reception. Same thing. Outgoing messages informed her that in light of yesterday's tragic events, the office would be closed for the remainder of the week. Wait a minute. Teresa furrowed her brow and put the phone down on the sink again. A second later, it rang again, and the screen said, Ray. She answered it without saying anything. Reese, Ray said, his voice whispering panic. Listen to me, there's a man with a gun. Teresa then began to sob and shook her head so violently she could barely hold her phone. I'm in the bathroom, down the hall from the office, baby. You killed Mark. I saw it happen. Ray's voice trembled in the verge of tears. Teresa sat down on the floor and brought her knees to her chest. She began to rock back and forth. A long moment of silence. Reese, baby, talk to me, Ray demanded desperately. Ray, she said through sobs. She could manage no more words than that. I don't know who the guy is, Ray said. He's wearing a mask, a ski mask. I think he's... But Ray stopped talking suddenly at the sound of the loud bang, disturbingly close. He hesitated and took a long, shaky breath. I love you, Reese, he whispered. Over the phone, Teresa heard the sound of the door being kicked open, hitting a wall. Ray gasped. Teresa relived the sound of the bathroom stall. Door being kicked open, the sound of Ray's desperate objection, and then, finally, the sound of gunfire, and then ensuing silence. Teresa relived the grief of her husband's death for the second time. She told no one about the call, not Cheryl, not her mother. She could not explain it to herself, much less to anyone else. The two had continued to keep her company throughout the day, answering phone calls, dealing with the details of Ray's viewing and funeral, which were scheduled for Saturday evening and Sunday morning, respectively. But mostly the two of them were simply there to make sure that Teresa was not alone. In her waking moments, they treated her like an antique porcelain doll, delicate, and fragile. She had still been in bed at noon the following day, Wednesday, two days later, after Ray's death, when her cell phone rang. The screen said Ray. Her body screamed, went completely numb, and she began to sob. She answered it. Ray, she said quietly. Why did the man always get hit by a bike on his way to work? Ray said. Teresa ended the call immediately and then shut her phone off completely and tossed it aside. Ray was dead. She lay in bed and wept. On the third day, Thursday, Teresa was alone in the house. Cheryl and her mother had other things to attend to and hadn't been outside the house since morning. Monday evening, Teresa had showered, brushed her hair, and even put on a bit of makeup. Her arms felt weak and heavy, as did she. She attempted a tired smile as she insisted that she would be fine if her mom and best friend left her alone. When her cell phone rang again, shortly after noon, she was sitting at the kitchen table, the bright sunlight through the windows making her head ache after so much time spent in the darkness of her bedroom. She answered it, and her voice was weak because he was stuck in a vicious cycle. There was silence on the other end, and for a moment Teresa wondered if Ray was really there. Finally he laughed and asked, "How did you do that?" "I'm not sure," she said. "Are you okay? You sound strange," Ray said. Teresa took a long, deep breath. "Do you know who Vincent Holland is?" she asked. "Yeah, he works down in engineering, I think. I don't know him really well. I do know that every day at lunch he eats an onion like an apple. Never seen anything like it." "Ray has a gun," Teresa said. "What? How do you know that?" "Please, Ray, don't ask me now. Don't ask me how I know. He has a gun and he's going to shoot people. You have to get out." "Reese, I don't." But then Ray stopped as they both heard the gun shots begin. What was that? "Listen to me," Teresa said. "You have to get out of the building." Ray was silent for the moment, then he said, Okay, I'm going," and then the phone fell silent. Teresa put the phone on the table and stared at it. Dust floated silently through a sunbeam that cascaded through the window and landed warm on the back of her neck. She wondered how the sun could continue to shine, as if the entire world wasn't enveloped in the grief as she was. Her phone rang again. She answered. "Baby." "I saw him," Ray whispered. "Where are you?" "I'm in the bathroom down the hall from my office. Baby, he killed Mark." Teresa ended the call and slammed her phone back down at the table. She put her hands over her eyes and cried. Shortly after noon, Teresa sat at the kitchen table with Cheryl and her mother. The three of them were quietly nursing cups of tea, the kitchen counters, and nearly every other available surface covered in gift baskets and flowers and so many other things that were going to die eventually. That's the problem with flowers. Cut flowers, they die, and yet you send them to a funeral. She never understood that. Teresa's mother and Cheryl made quiet small talk as Teresa sat silently, her eyes intently focused on her cell phone, which sat like a dumb blank slate on the table in front of her. 12:03 came and went without a call from Ray. Teresa chuckled mirthlessly to herself. She had intentionally made sure she was not alone for today's phone call from Ray. But if he did call again, this time she wanted a witness, or witnesses, but a part of her knew that he would not call her if she was not alone. "Is Teresa peeled her eyes away from the silent phone. Yes, she whispered and sipped her tea. Why wouldn't they be? Well, just asking. I flew in from across the country for Ray's funeral and viewing. Teresa's mother and I were cordial towards each other, but also avoided each other as much as possible for Teresa's sake. I was shocked how she looked tired and haggard and grief-stricken, of course, but also avoided each other as much as possible. But she also looked troubled in a way that did not look simple. Or simple mourning. I don't know. It was strange. I quietly looked at her, observed her, and it held her tightly several times over the course of those 2 days, always at a loss for words, whispering there was anything in the world I could do to remove the weight of sorrow pressing on her shoulders. Teresa told me that she had tucked her phone away during those 2 days of activities. She had thought that maybe going through the ceremony of remembering Ray's life, seeing the serene face, his serene face, would be enough. And then they watched with surprising detachment as the body was lowered into the ground and bringing a final end to his daily calls, his daily jokes, his warmth, his love. Ray. But on Monday, alone at home for only 1 second time in the week since Ray had passed away, her phone rang again. She considered not answering it, but could not resist doing so. A sense of both longing and hopelessness in her chest. Ray, she said. Why did the man get hit by the bike on his way to work? Ray said, and Teresa burst into tears. Why? For the next several days, Teresa lived in a fog. She always took Ray's call. Some days she let the conversation play out like it had the first day, relishing those first fleeting seconds when Ray was still happy and alive. Other days she was interrupted. He interrupted his joke in order to ask him a question like where he was and put the key to the safety deposit box or where he had filed insurance papers. Confused but cooperative, Ray always answered her questions. Some days she had used those initial seconds to convey her deep love for him, and she had always sobbed as she expressed his love for her in return. But then, all too quickly, it all played out again. The sound of gunfire, the kicking in of the door, the 2 last shots. The deja vu was a horror she was trapped in. A scene from a horror movie too gruesome and too painful to live through over and over. And then one day, weeks on the phone, had rung and Teresa had said, "Hello, baby," and waited for Ray to launch into his bicycle joke. There was a pause and Ray had said, "Reese, did I call you earlier today?" A coldness swept through Teresa's chest that she couldn't understand. What? No, you didn't. It's so strange. Ray said I picked up the phone to call you and got this sudden sense of deja vu like I had already called you. A tear fell down Teresa's cheek. She couldn't find words. I'm getting chills. Is everything okay? Ray said. I miss you, baby, she whispered. Ray chuckled. I miss you too. He responded more of a question than a statement. I'll see you in a few hours. Ray, no you won't. Ray's what? Then he stopped. Did you hear that? Teresa hung up the phone. Her thoughts stirred with confusion. sense of hope and detachment or something flooded over her. Every prior conversation had been laden with a heavy sense of the inevitable. No matter what Teresa had said to him, Ray would always end up dead on the floor of his office bathroom. But today seemed he had to remember something, and their conversation had taken a different course at Ray's direction. And Teresa began to wonder what would happen if she tried to push harder, maybe more of an effort to get Ray to take a different course of action. What would happen? What he said. Answer me, she insisted. There's the main door straight through. Goes to the IT department and to the left takes me down the main hall. There's a second door that goes through the HR. But that just meets up with the main hallway at the other end, and then there's the door to the balcony. Why are you asking me this? Grab your keys, Teresa said. Don't grab anything else. Listen to me. Go through the IT department. Do not go down the hall. Get to your car and come home now. There was a pause. Then Ray said, Okay, I'm coming, and the line went dead. Teresa found herself out of breath. While she waited, she paced. Moments later, her phone rang. Reese, listen to me. There's a man with a gun. Teresa screamed in frustration and threw her phone across the room, where it hit the carpet and slid across the door. The next time he called, Teresa asked Ray, the balcony outside your department, does it have steps that go down to the courtyard? Yes, it does. Why do you ask? You can get to the parking lot from there. Yes. What is going on, Teresa? You're scaring me. Go. Teresa insisted. Don't ask me anything else. Just get out the balcony doors and go to your car. Do it now. Come home. Is everything okay? Asked. Go, she yelled and hung up the phone. A minute passed, then two. Teresa barely breathed as she stared at her phone. 5 minutes passed without a call from Ray. She was finally able to take a breath. Teresa was on her bed. Her back ached as she sat arched over her phone. For the first time since the day he died, there was no second phone call, and Teresa had no idea what to expect next. She was lost in nearly thoughtless daze that when she heard the front door open, she jumped and nearly cried out. The door closed and she heard footsteps. She jumped up from the bed, racing from the bedroom and down the hall to the foyer. And there he was, impossibly. There he was, his tall, gangly, goofy, looking yet handsome self. Although his skin was deathly pale to the point of almost being blue, he smiled at her. Although his brow was furrowed in concern, his mouth formed the beginnings of a question, but she ran to him and leaped in his arms. He was cold, deathly cold, and Teresa gasped. Is everything okay? He asked, and his voice sounded like it did on mornings when he first woke up, rattling and unused. Everything is okay now. Everything is okay now, Teresa said, weeping into his shoulder, holding him tighter than she had ever had before. And in return, Ray held her tightly as well, but his hands were like ice on her back, his body stiff against hers, and although her ear was pressed firmly against his chest, she did not feel a heartbeat. A fact that she dismissed just as quickly as she realized it. Teresa decided to tell him everything. Sitting at the kitchen table, she held his icy hand in both of hers, and she recounted every detail. From the initial shooting at Ray's office, his death, his funeral, and his daily phone calls, he stared at her blankly, his face registering no alarm, confusion, or even recollection as she spoke. She sat back in her chair and considered him for a moment. Tabula rasa, she thought dully as she looked at him. He wasn't hungry. He wasn't thirsty. He was content to sit quietly until Teresa gave him direction to move. Her heart ached with dueling emotions of relief and terrible confusion as she watched him closely, unable to hide obvious bewilderment on her face, and yet Ray never asked her what was wrong. slid in bed beside him and kissed him. His kiss was both familiar and foreign to her. His lips were soft and passive. They had always been firm and insistent before, and there was no warmth there. But the texture and the taste of him was the same, and Teresa nearly wept as they embraced again. They made love, Teresa initiating and leading where Ray had always taken charge before. And while her heart overflowed with the joy of being held by her husband once more, her body shivered at the ickiness of his touch. When Teresa awoke the next morning, sunlight touching her eyelids, she reached out without opening her eyes, but her fingers encountered nothing. Ray's side of the bed was empty. The covers pulled up as if he had never been there. She said, "Ray, Ray." She called out, but there was, of course, no answer. She searched the house, calling out for him several times, but he was gone. And then, shortly after noon, her phone rang. The screen said, "Ray," and she answered it. "Ray." But there was no answer. And then, "Reese," he said, his voice sounding even more raspy and unused than before. "Don't worry, I know there's a shooter. I'm coming home." "Reese," he said, his voice sounding even more raspy than before, unused. "I'm coming home," echoed in her mind. The line went dead, and Teresa sat with her phone by the side of the bed. Her chest knotted into a cacophony of emotions, sorrow, hope, frustration, and even fear that she realized she could barely feel anything anymore. But come home he did, and this became the new pattern, the new vicious cycle they were stuck in. Every day he would come home, every day looking more and more pale, feeling more cold to the touch, his personality receding even further into the empty shell that he was becoming, a vacancy behind the eyes that had once been so passionate and full of life. Teresa had to tell him to sit, to eat, to bathe himself. He was like an elderly man who was losing all his faculties, and Teresa evolved into his loving but confused and somewhat terrified caretaker. And every morning, Ray's side of the bed would be empty again, and he would call Teresa from work shortly after noon to tell her that he was coming home. Teresa noticed that each time his voice sounded more like it was being dragged over stones, like his vocal cords, like they were decaying. She thought and closed her eyes, trying to erase the idea at all. It was not long before his countenance began to catch up with his voice. He began to look more physically withered. His tall frame began to bend. His eyes large in their sockets, and his face became even more wan, his cheeks more sunken in. Teresa allowed the cycle to continue for months. For love for her husband, she loved him, and locking in her living hell. But she was rapidly reaching the point of collapse herself, her emotional and mental well-being withering right along with Ray's countenance. "I'm coming home," he said to her over the phone, his voice like a dusty rock being rubbed together, barely recognizable to her. Wait, she said. "Ray, don't come home. Stay, it's okay. Stay there." "No," he responded, slowly and without emotion. "No, if I stay, I'll die. I'm coming home." Teresa hung up the phone, wept, and waited once more for her husband to return. She wept because her husband was dead. She wept because he was alive, yet dying dying more and more every day before her very eyes. She wept because she felt bound to him in whatever repeating loop that his death and their love had created, and she wept because they were together again, and yet she felt entirely alone. Finally, on the day that Teresa took her own life, she made a decision that came to her easily and without fear. In fact, the idea gave her the first comfort she had felt in a year since Ray had died. Perhaps the key to escaping this living hell was to die herself. More precisely, to die beside Ray as they slept together in bed, and in the morning when he was gone, perhaps she would be gone too. Gone, but together. She called me that afternoon to tell me her story, to tell me her plan, and to tell me goodbye. I listened with terrified disbelief as she recounted the details of her miserable life in the months since Ray had died. Her story was one I could not accept at first, yet simultaneously I knew from the sound of her tired yet determined voice that my daughter was telling me the absolute truth. "Is Ray there now?" I asked. "Yes," she said tiredly. "Do you want to talk to him?" I didn't answer, but then I heard Teresa say distantly, "It's Dad. Talk to him." There was a shuffling sound followed by raspy breathing. "Ray," I said. I was surprised to find my own voice was trembling. He didn't respond, but I could hear as he attempted to. All I heard was the sound of his laborious breath and the vaguely recognizable tones of his voice as he attempted to speak to me. But his words were garbled, his voice wasted. Teresa took the phone back. "I have to go now, Daddy." "Baby, don't do this," I said, crying but trying to hold myself together. "I love you. Your mother loves you. Let us help you. There has to be some other way." Teresa began to cry. "There's no other way, Daddy. This is the only way." "No," I insisted. "You have so much to live for." "Let me take you away from there. You can come here. Maybe Ray won't come to you anymore if you're not there." I felt myself playing along with her, even though I wasn't sure I even fully believed my daughter. "Daddy, there's something else," she said, a long and exhausted breath. "I'm pregnant." I started, then stopped. A hard lump rose in my throat. I couldn't breathe. My mind pieced together. Teresa was pregnant, a Ray had been dead for more than a year. "It's Ray's," she said, answering the question I hadn't asked, but she didn't finish the statement. "I don't know what it is. I just know I can't, Daddy. I just can't." She wept. She said her final goodbyes to me, ignoring my pleading, and then the call was gone, was over, finished. I already told you how the police found her. The autopsy revealed that she had died consuming a large number of sleeping pills left helpfully behind by her best friend Cheryl. The autopsy also revealed that she had been pregnant for several months. I insisted that this detail never be revealed to her mother. Estranged and distant though we are, there are some horrors a mother should be spared when it comes to her own child. So this, as I said, is Teresa's story, and the story of her husband Ray, and you may not believe me, but it is absolutely a true story. As fantastical as that might sound, I believe Teresa now, although 2 weeks ago when she told me her story for the first time, of course I had doubted her. she calls to tell me over and over again. Well, that left me with chills. I hope you enjoyed that creepypasta slash paranormal video, but scary story as it may be. It was very good and emotional, obviously. It hit home, of course. But I wish you all the best and be safe. And remember, if you hear anything, get out, go home. Do not stay and try to help because there is nothing you can do. Or if you want to stay and help, just don't call your wife to tell her you're gonna die. I don't know. I'm not sure what the moral of that story is, but it seems that either way, the ending isn't good. I don't know what I would do. What would you do in that situation? I would definitely call my daughter and tell her I loved her, and well, I don't have a mother anymore, and no significant other. So yes, I'd probably just call my daughter and tell her that I loved her. But, things like this have happened lately, and I guess that's why it hit me so hard. What do you say when you think about what, how do you live with it, right? Who do you call when nobody understands your pain? Taken too soon, taken the wrong way, taken from a person that has lost their mind, who could have gotten help. Maybe there were signs, maybe there weren't. But I do know that we have to be compassionate before it gets to this point. We have to show our love for one another. Stop just looking at our lives, and maybe, just maybe, we might see that others are suffering too and need help. It just seems to be happening so much.